While I make every effort to broadcast correct information, I'm also still learning. I will double check all my facts, but realize that healthcare is a constantly changing science and art. One doctor or healthcare provider may have a different way of doing things from another. I welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. I take no money from supplement or device companies. By listening to this podcast or reading this blog, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as medical advice or to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your healthcare provider for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast or the website. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or blog or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Boss Body podcast be responsible for damages arising from use of the podcast or the blog. This blog or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing the standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or the blog. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Boss Body Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Jackson. Today we have another very special guest, Amy Stark. And we're taking a little bit of a detour from our previous podcast where it's been mostly biohacking and functional medicine. And Amy, I'm going to tell you about her and her credentials right now, but she also has some gifts that really can't be taught. And so she's a great blend of science and intuition. So Amy Stark is an author, speaker, and teacher about personal transformation and host of the Stark Transformation Show. For over a decade, Amy has been teaching others how to master their life and energy with the most cutting-edge tools and techniques. She has a degree in psychology, a master's in education, is a licensed massage therapist, and a biohacker at heart. She's a trained Reiki master and reconnective healer, EFT practitioner, and is known around the world for helping people to create happier and healthier lives full of joy and purpose. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, so just right out of the gate, can you kind of give us an idea of what you work on with people and what types of people you work with?
Sure. I work with anybody who is looking to maximize their potential, really. But over the course of my career as a energy healer, practitioner, mindset coach, transformation expert, all the things, I've worked with kids with autism to, people who are speaking on stages across the world, really. So I really help people to release limiting beliefs or fears that they have that are getting in the way of their potential. I also help people to release the trauma that they've got stored in their body, so that they aren't getting triggered into the fight or flight state, and then, thus not performing the best that they could, or their immune system is hijacked, or, is just failing because they're constantly in this fight or flight or whatever. So it's pretty amazing what this work can do for a person who's trying to really up level. Because when we really want to, I like to say, triple fast forward our transformation, we need to address the energy. So it's really interesting what creates that. And I'll tell you my story because it was nuts.
Yeah.
I went from science teacher to now doing this. So I was like, what the heck is going on here? What happened was I was working in New York City as a high school science teacher, and I was working with students with emotional disturbances, and they were very angry, and they had experienced a lot of trauma, and my life was in jeopardy every single day for 4 years. So I had to leave that job because I got so stressed out. And so a friend of mine, after I got my master's degree, and I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I have a pension, going, and all that other stuff. I'm set for life. It was like, I can't do this. And it was like a real dark night of the soul for me. And a friend recommended meditation. And I had been an athlete for 25 years. I also was chronically ill, but I was an athlete and I was good. And so I said to myself, I'm like, listen, Amy, there's no reason why you can't sit down and meditate, right? Like, you've played on soccer fields, you've done it all, like on terms of like throwing it down on the field. you can sit for 15 minutes with your eyes shut and try to like see what it's all about. And so I looked at it as a dare. But really she was just trying to help me. And so it was actually the best thing that I've ever done for myself. And quickly I realized that meditating felt really good. And it was a good that I had not yet experienced. And then you start hearing the inner chatter that's going on in your mind. And you're like, wow, holy moly, this is the way I've been talking to myself for years. This is crazy. So, you would never talk to your friends that way. So why are you talking to yourself? So it became a process of whittling away that inner chatter that was not helpful. And it's funny because I have a psychology degree and I was doing some of the research, like, what is this all about? Like this inner chatter that's terrible. And 70% of the time, people think that they're thinking positive thoughts, but they're actually 70% of the time negative thoughts. So they're like way off base. People have no idea that this is going on because it's all coming from the unconscious or subconscious. And so I help people now to rewrite that stuff that's been there for years and years and years, creating basically misery in their life and feeling like they're a hamster on a wheel. And finally they break free and they can become the person that they've always wanted to be and do the things that they've always wanted to do and not apologize or feel like they're taking up space or pissing people off because they're successful or whatever. They can just enjoy it. There's so much we could talk about this.
Yeah, so that's an incredible story. I think it's great that you have a background in science, but you're also combining it with, more esoteric type fields because most functional medicine doctors, they hear, okay, medicine, healthcare is a science and an art. They just cringe when they hear art, but it is. I mean, it's how you deliver it, it's how you translate that information from bench to bedside. So one book I read many years ago, and I have it somewhere, is Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Are you familiar with that book?
I actually am not. That's very interesting. I haven't heard that one.
So it's a great book. He was a plastic surgeon. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But what he noticed is that he was performing different cosmetic procedures, and the times when he knew he did his best work, oftentimes those patients were the most dissatisfied. And even though like he could show them, okay, it's changed this many degrees or this many inches, they still in the theater of the mind, that's what he calls it, had this image of themselves as their previous self. And it
Mm.
hadn't been replaced. So I love that phrase, the theater of the mind. But let's talk about, the theater of the mind and the subconscious. How do you bring the subconscious into the conscious?
Very good question. First of all, I just want to say that there was enough things that happened in meditation that really helped me to dive deeper into this because it is very confusing how the theater of the mind is creating this life that you have, and you're like, I don't get it. I see it like this. This. I don't understand how to do anything different. But you have to get quiet and you have to spend time with yourself. So the meditation is really helpful, but getting awareness of your thoughts is the thing you have to do in order to see how you're creating your life, where you're falling short, thinking about what has happened in the past that is limiting you. So it's interesting. I'll give you an example to kind of like bring this home. I was working with a client one time. She was in her mid 40s and she wanted to go after a job that she's always wanted, but came to me because she didn't feel worthy of getting that job. So we started doing some of the work, which is EFT. I do work with people using this tool EFT, which I'll explain in a few minutes, but it's called emotional freedom technique. And we start tapping and talking, and she then starts talking about this moment in time that because I'm seeing her because I have gifts. I'm seeing her as in second grade, and she is in front of the class, and I feel absolute mortification. And so I asked her, I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, actually, I was in front of the class and I peed in my pants in second grade." She's like, "Actually, I had a really tough time because that year I had a urinary tract infection that was undiagnosed, and my parents thought I was just peeing in my pants to get attention." And so here she was thinking that nobody cared about what she was feeling or how she was describing herself. Like to them, like they kept thinking she's just a bad kid and that she was just being, trying to get attention. So that was related to her stepping into her power, because she just over the years she started seeing the world as nobody listens to me, nobody sees me. I can say all I want and they still don't get me. So that's what caused her to not feel like she was worthy by the time she was 40 something years old. So these experiences that we have in childhood create these lenses in which we see the world, and then that becomes our limitations. So when I work with people, we look at those lenses and we start to take down these lenses, and it's really called your reticular activating system. It's how you see the world. And when you do that, then all of a sudden it was amazing, because we're doing this tapping and talking, where you want to call out these experiences because the body's been holding on to it, waiting for you to process it. And as soon as it processes it, there's such relief that happens. And from my perspective, because I'm gifted in seeing the energy of the body, it's almost like digital codes come down into the body, fill the body with energy. The person remembers who they truly are and why they're here. And then they go forward with that energy, and they cannot remember or feel like why they would ever in a million years not go after the job that they really wanted, or give the presentation that would get them to the next level. It's amazing how the nervous system just will hold that information until it's time to release it. So and here's the thing, it's not something that's talked about a lot, right? So we don't know that this is even happening for many of us. Now the kids that are younger coming in, they're starting to get an awareness of mental health, and like how we talk to ourselves, maybe about meditation, yoga, things like that. It's different for them, but for anybody who is like 30 and up, was just not really talked about. So we're in the grocery store and we're, thinking of something, we get overwhelmed, we want to cry, we don't, we maybe even shame ourselves for wanting to get upset in public. And then we go home and we were like, I have to make dinner. So you never process it and it gets stored in your throat. And that's what like a lump in your throat might feel like. Or, why your shoulders are always like up at your ears, because, you're just bracing for the worst. Or why we hunch over our shoulders and protect our heart because we don't trust. There's lots of ways in which the body will hold on to this information. And we're like, I don't get it. Why is my shoulders always rolled over? And then all of a sudden you release that trauma and you're like, oh, I can hold myself up straight. I can, I'm not feeling like I need to protect my heart. So it's all related. And that's the thing, is like, Tim and I were just talking about how it, becoming the greatest version of you is not just one thing. It's many things that are going to create this wonderful life that you're trying to create. It's addressing any nutritional deficiencies. It's addressing the food that might be causing a trigger in your body and hijacking your nervous system. It's mindset. It's trauma. It's meditation. Like things, all these kinds of things need to be looked at so that you can then get healthy on a total level and increase your energy field so that you become this magnet for the things that you want, rather than surveying the land all the time to see who's going to hurt you.
Right. Absolutely. One thing I want to touch on, sort of circle back to, in 2011, I was taking an active release technique course, a type of soft tissue manipulation. And one of the other doctors taking it, or providers taking it, he said that, he had done myofascial release on a few patients and they started crying in the middle of the session. And I didn't not believe him, but I was just trying to think, how exactly that worked, because I wasn't really aware of energy healing and that sort of stuff back then. But have you seen that sort of stuff happen with, say, myofascial release or other manual therapies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes here's the thing, is we don't have a very good memory usually of the past. And in fact, sometimes it's inaccurate, but the body keeps a score. There's a book about that. And so sometimes when I'm talking to a client, I'll say, okay, you may not remember age 4, right? But what I'm seeing is this image and I'm getting this feeling. Let's start tapping and see if you have any recollection of it. And all of a sudden they're like, I don't remember it, but I feel it in my body. And their whole body gets starts feeling some sensation, sometimes maybe crying, sometimes tense, sometimes nausea. I mean, it just depends. And then all of a sudden it leaves like a wave out of the body. And in fact, my clients like to call me the onion layer slayer because I'm like, okay, which one, we're peeling these layers off of you. And we want ultimately for you to let go of those things because they aren't serving you. They were once there to protect you, but now you're an adult and you have resources and information and people to help you, and you understand the world a lot more, differently than you did when you were ages 0 to 7, because that's usually when we're making our subconscious programming. So basically, for a lot of us who are out there, running our lives, if they haven't done meditation, if they haven't checked in with their thoughts, they're basically like a 7-year-old running around in a 45-year-old body trying to solve the world's problems. And they find that they're just getting stuck. And it's because they have these limitations and these programs that are in there. And so we together rewrite and release and repeat, because there's a lot there. I've been doing this for 16 years, and I was just out at the chiropractor, and he was like working on something with me. I mean, we're always releasing because we want to get to the next level, right?
Right.
We always want to keep improving. At least that's what my motto is. I love to transform and um, be capable of doing some really amazing things.
Can you talk about, I mean, you don't have to mention names or anything, any clients you might have worked with who the talent and the intelligence was always there, but they needed to get out of their own way?
Yeah, it happens often. More so than you would really think. People, there's especially if people are energetically sensitive, so they are empaths. So if especially people with chronic illness. So here's the kind of this is what my journey looked like and why I ended up being so sensitive, and then realize I can use this as a gift and I don't have to stay sensitive to the world all the time. um I was chronically ill growing up for 30 years. I At 26 years old, I found meditation. I started to unwind all these things. I started getting healthier, naturally gravitated to the things that were better for me, like salads versus cookies. Like I loved sugar. I don't really anymore. I mean, I have it, but it's not like an addiction or anything like that, like it was. So, if we are sensitive empaths and we sense the emotions of other people around us, we wind up doing things for them because we want to get them out of our space. We want to um help them to feel better so that we would feel better, because our emotions are so entangled that we think that we feel like they're stress. So if they stop feeling stressed, then we stop feeling stressed. So then we wind up living lives where we're constantly running around and trying to get people to not feel stress around us. And then we forget about who we really are and what we're here to do, and even what our favorite color is or whatever, because we start living for everyone else. This process of unwinding and going inward and being like, why do I do that? Why do I feel like I need to address all these people's agendas versus my own? Why am I a people pleaser? Why am I a perfectionist? Oh, it's because it made me feel safe and secure. And then you're like, well, now I'm an adult and I can choose. And so then you start to take your energy back, really, and just say, you know what? You can wait until I have all my stuff done, until I feel ready to help you, which changes the energy of the situation. Because before, it's like you're out there putting out fires and you're just exhausted and there's just not enough time in the day. So in the new version of you wind up thinking, okay, what do I need to accomplish today? You start with your inner world and you say, okay, these are the things I need to accomplish. Do I have time to make the cookies for the bake sale? Do I have time to help Susie go get her car from, wherever? And then you begin to say no where you need to, rather than feeling like you have to do everything. So that's why we do this. And then once you start gaining more of that energy, your energy field actually gets stronger. You get more clarity. You start to realize, oh, now I'm using my intuition. So things start happening a little faster because I'm starting to realize, oh, of my 10 options, the first two are the best. I'm going to go for those and see what happens first. So you
Mhm.
just wind up creating a life that is a lot easier and a lot more fun and a lot more joyful, and you get healthier because your body isn't in this fight or flight.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between being an empath and being codependent?
Interesting. A lot of times it goes together. So we want to we want to have a stronger energetic field so we can say no. Um, Empaths are so there are people out there that will try to manipulate empaths. I'm not gonna, lie about that. Because we are easily manipulated if we aren't in control of our energy. And that's because when somebody's in our field, it feels like our own emotions. Like we get confused. And so that happened a lot for me. In fact, here I'm gonna lay this out real simple.
Okay.
But the reason why I know this to be true is like I am a canary in the coal mine. And here's why. I was sitting on my couch at 26 years old, meditating, and all of a sudden I felt like my eyes were burning. And the last person I thought of was my twin sister. So I called her up and I was like, Sarah, how are you doing? And she was like, I have a double pink eye infection. And I was like, whoa, holy cow, what's going on here? My eyes were burning. I thought of you. So I thought, well, maybe that's twin tuition because she's my twin sister. So the next day I'm meditating and all of a sudden I start feeling my tooth hurting and my back of my mouth. I knew it exactly which tooth. And I'm like, oh man, do I need to go to the dentist? Open my eyes and my tooth is fine. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm like, who was the last person I thought of? It was my dad. So I called my mom. I'm like, how's dad doing? And she's like, oh, he's at the dentist right now. He bit down on a walnut and broke his tooth. And I'm like, what is going on? If I go into this meditative space, I can pick up on all these different feelings that people are having, like intense body sensations, feelings like as if it's mine. So I'm like, okay, so this is happening a lot more than I think, right? Because here I am in meditation, but this is not just limited to meditation, I'm sure. Sure enough. So I started seeing and feeling things all the time and realizing I got to get this information out of my body because that's what it is, energy and information, and keep it out. So this is why when we hang out with somebody, we can feel drained. We can start walk away and feel like be happy, and then interact with somebody who's depressed, walk away depressed, because we're picking up those vibes. As we say in modern day society. That's the way
Right.
we're talking about this energy transfer. So um, this is why we need to be really careful about how strong our energetic field is. So that's why I am a biohacker. I love, what supplements are going to, help me detoxify and keep me strong. What foods are going to weaken like kryptonite. For me, it's gluten. Gluten is kryptonite for me. And I'm like, hell no, it's not worth it. Like I want to be a superhero, like all the time. I want to have clarity and not have my nervous system hijacked, so these are things that can influence our ability to create the life that we want. So you just address them and it's easy. Like I wear blue blocking glasses at night. Great sleep then. I got 2 hours of deep sleep last night. Perfect. I'm a superhero, right? Like, I mean, I wear an aura ring and it tells me I got today I had a 94 and a crown. I'm like, yep. Superhero showing up to work, right? That's what I want. And that's what my clients expect. That's what people who work with me expect from me is to bring the superhero energy, right? So all I do is I just keep maintaining and I put these things into place to make it easy so that it's not a lot of thought, right? I have my blue blocking glasses sitting next to the chair where I'm going to sit down and watch TV. I have curtains that are already black that when I close them, it's dark in there. I have a chili pad that I absolutely love and I would never separate from it if anybody ever asked me to. I love that thing because it brings down the temperature to 63 degrees, so there's these things that we can do to maximize our physical energy, but then we got to maximize the mental energy as well through having empowering thoughts. I mean, we could go down this road. Like there's a lady called Donna Eden who can look at a football player with a negative thought. She's a tiny old lady. She's 60, 70 something years old. She could take him down because she can look at him with a negative thought, reverse his energy field, and he becomes weak. That's how
Wow.
powerful your mind is. I could also tell you about this. So I'm starting to become part of research. And so in order to do that, I had to go to a lab and I had to show that I had energy healing skills, right? That I can influence people's bodies and energy and blah, blah, blah. So one of the things that they did was they handed me water and they said, change the acidity of this water. It's 8.9. We want it down to at least 7. So all I had to do, I had 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I think I had 10 minutes and I only took 5, but I'm not allowed to spit on it or touch it or anything like that. I have to use my energy. So I changed it. I changed it down to 6.8 in 5 minutes. But the thing is, she's like, Amy, how did you do that? The parts per million did not change. So normally when you change acidity, the parts per million will change. She's like, that's how strong your mind is. that you were able to change the one thing that we asked you to change. And so then she said, well, now you need to change the parts per million because you need to be in the study. So I was like, okay, I'll change the parts per million. And I was like, do I need to increase it or decrease it? And she's like, increase it. So I was like, okay. So I increased it in 10 seconds. She came over and tested it, and it 3 quantum fold changed. So
Wow.
your mind is super powerful if you allow it to be.
Yeah, I think it's super powerful for everyone, but it can be super powerful in a negative way, and that's how most people are functioning. But working with someone like yourself, creating self-awareness, you can get past that and use it in a positive manner. So, in terms of things that you're working on and launching, I know you mentioned a membership site. Can you touch on that?
Sure. Yeah. So the membership is coming up at beginning of December. We are going to be supporting anybody who is working on well, the membership is called Activate. So people are going to say, I'm trying to activate my wealth or my health or my happiness. They can pick what they're trying to activate within themselves, because I do think that we have all of this there. Is kind of like we're light bulbs that have a lot of dust on it and just need to be cleaned off. And so that's the approach that I take. So when people join Activate, they're going to get access to, I have 165 podcasts. And they're all mind, body, spirit. They're talking about my journey as well as other people. And generally speaking, people who do the work that you and I do go through a dark night of the soul, where we're just like at our knees and just like saying, please help. Like, I don't know what to do next. I thought I did everything right, and I'm here and it's not working out. And that's where I was at 26. So I woke up real early, in life comparatively to a lot of people, which was also hard in and of itself, because I was like, where are my people? And I was 26 and they were all like, why are you talking about this stuff? So, they'll get those podcasts, and then also any of the classes or talks that I've done, as well as the little hacks and things like that that I do to help my own energy. And then we meet once a week to discuss whatever people need help with. So I will, when people tell me, I can read their energy field and I can see the things that are holding them back, and I'll say, okay, it's X, Y, and Z. So go back and work on those things. Use the tools that I've given you, because I'm not here to do the work for anybody. I'm here to empower people to do it for themselves, to find the answers themselves, because that's how you create. So you want, people have their breakdowns at like midnight, on a Sunday night, right? I'm not around, at that time. My phone is on airplane, another biohack. Um, and I'm just sleeping, getting my superhero energy. And so they need to be able to handle it themselves. They need to know that they can do tapping, which is EFT, or they can sit there and meditate, or they can take a cold shower, or whatever it is that's going to work for them. Just learning that your thoughts are, that you can control your thoughts. Can I give your listeners one little cute little trick?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here's where I started with this whole thing. Other than meditation, in learning to master your thoughts, this was the thing that really helped to change it for me. And it's so simple. I had a rock that I put in my pocket, and every time that I touched the rock, I had to say what I was grateful for. So you'd be surprised at how often you wind up actually touching that rock, and how often you have to say what you're grateful for. So like, I'll be paying for something and the person would say it's $7.34, and you're like, oh, I touched it, I have to say it. So I would say, okay, I'm grateful that I have this money in my pocket, and then I'd go back. So that back and forth of like pausing the moment, intentionally saying what you're grateful for, helps that mental flexibility and the control over your thoughts. And like, no, this thing can wait, and paying this man, even though he's probably really pissed that I'm taking the second, to fix, or to shift my mindset. So that's a really great way to start playing playfully with your mind and raising the vibration of your field, because gratitude is a really high vibe. You're in the parasympathetic nervous system if you're grateful, because when you're grateful, you already have everything that you need right in that moment, right? That's why you're feeling that gratitude. So it's a wonderful hack for your nervous system. It's a wonderful hack for your health. It's a wonderful hack for your mind and your happiness. And it
And your
also,
hormones, it raises DHEA and lowers cortisol.
There you go. And that same with EFT. EFT lowers cortisol levels by 37% if you tap for an hour, which is a long time, but you don't have to do it that way. But if you do triple fast forward EFT, which is what I teach, I bet you, I mean, unfortunately, we haven't done any studies, but I bet you it's a lot faster and a lot greater of a transformation. But still, 37% decrease in cortisol levels in 1 hour is awesome. Turning on 72 genes for healing, that's also great. That's what EFT, traditional EFT, will do. If you pay attention to the whole body and where you're feeling things, talk about your feelings, really incorporate everything. That's the triple fast forward way. That's going to release those things real fast and help you to see the world differently.
Wow, that's really insightful and really great information. I wanted to
You're
ask
welcome.
you about different universal themes that I've seen in patients, myself, family members, friends. A few that come to mind right offhand. One is that, life needs to be hard. Life's just hard.
Right.
And so then it's sort of a confirmation bias in my experience. So you sort of do things or choose things that will make your life difficult so that you're in congruence,
Right.
or that you need to have a lot of tough times. Like, certainly everyone has tough times here and there, but you need to constantly have a tough time. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So, a couple of things you said there are really important. One, the brain is a goal achieving machine. So, if you think that there are tough times, you will find the tough times. Your brain, that's your reticular activating system, finding the things that are alike in your world. So, like if you're trying to buy a white car, you will see white cars everywhere. It is because your brain tagged it as important. Unfortunately, you don't want to really tag, that life is hard as important, but that's the way your brain sees it when you keep repeating it over and over again. So, because there's too many stimuli coming into the brain and body that it starts to create these like hacks, like to navigate your world. So you have to be very conscious about what you're saying, what you're thinking, what you're doing, because ultimately that's how you start to build your new life. Because your brain says, "Oh, meeting like-minded people is important." So then you keep focusing on that, and then I meet someone like Tim. I have a podcast where I have all these really amazing people from all over the world, and I'm like, is this really my job? Like, I
Right.
get to talk to these people and pick their brain about how they conquered X, Y, and Z. So that's really important, to know. But also, you mentioned how a lot of times people who are sick tend to have this mentality of life is hard, and yes, it is. But again, what's harder? And I say this all the time to people, what's harder, living a life where you feel like you have no power, or creating a life where you have power, but you have to take risks and, you know, send out a resume or whatever it may be, or ask that person to marry you or whatever. It's going to be hard either way. Right.
Right.
So I always tell people, it's like, if it's going to be hard either way, why don't you choose the empowering way? Right?
Right.
Why don't you start to see the world the way that you really want to see it? Um and it really works out for you. It's amazing how this happens, because all of a sudden, if you think the world is magical and special and, is constantly giving you gifts, that's what you see. You start to see the beauty in the mundane, where
Yeah.
people are like, "What's wrong with Amy?" And then you're like, "I don't care what they think of me. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I'm doing the things that I want to be doing in this world." So it's kind of like, you get to create your life either way. So you can either do it unconsciously or consciously.
Yeah, I was watching an Instagram post from Tom Bilyeu, the founder of Quest. I think he sold it now, but he was interviewing a guest, and the guest told a story of a guy that he knew in high school. He didn't get very good grades, bordering on flunking out. He wasn't very popular, but his mom and dad said, "You need to take the SAT." So he took it, and he got like a 1480 out of
Oh,
1600.
wow.
Well, his mom and dad said, "Did you cheat?" He said, "Well, actually, I tried to cheat, but I couldn't. The way the forms were required to be filled out." Fast forward, so he went on to become a multi millionaire, own several businesses, super successful. And about 15 years after he had taken the test, he got a letter in the mail. Turns out he was one of 15 people in the United States that year who were sent the incorrect score. His real score was 700 and something.
Oh my gosh. That is
So,
funny.
but he once he thought that, that
Right.
test says I'm smart. So then he put it in his mind's eye that he's smart. So he starts reaching out for congruence. And I think, that's another point of Dr. Maltz's book is that, you can try to do positive things, but if your vision of yourself in your mind's eye is still that you're not very smart, you're not very attractive, you're not very strong, then you're going to do things to prove that right.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I actually, when I was 16 years old, I broke my lower back and I was out of school for one whole year. And prior to that experience, I had considered myself a jock and I was like good at sports, obviously, but okay at school. Never really applied myself because it was way more important to me to be better at sports. Well, once I was on my back for a whole year and I had to teach myself chemistry and all the other things, I realized I was actually really smart and I was like not applying myself before. So that experience helped me to be like, wow, what else is possible? First of all, I healed my back when I wasn't supposed to. The doctor didn't believe that I could have been the same person who broke their back 9 months later, comparing the scans. So I was like, whoa, how did that happen? And I also knew that I could heal myself at 16 years old. I didn't understand it at the time, but I had the option of doing a surgery or not. And my mom said, it's up to you. What do you want to do? And I said, first I said surgery. And then I came down the next morning. I said, I'm not getting the surgery. And I still to this day don't know what made me change my mind. Other than probably it was part of my life path to like be doing this kind of work. So that year was really a lot about what else is possible, and who can I become and how do I make an impact and what is the role of the mind? All this stuff started coming to me. So I can see how, yeah, obviously he got the score. I wish that would happen to me. That's pretty awesome. That was very stressful taking the SATs, which by the way, EFT helps with anybody who's has stress with taking tests. I wish I knew that back then.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's we're forced to take tests, standardized tests, but if you don't have a standardized brain, intelligence is definitely relative. And the
Yeah.
people I went to a top 25 university, Wake Forest, and the people who did the best on the SATs did not have the highest GPAs. That much I know for sure. So I think less focus is being placed on those tests because if you have someone who just did the best they could at the school they were at in high school, but they didn't have very good teachers or programs, then you can certainly overcome that, but your scores on your SAT won't reflect your real intelligence.
Right. I think the number one thing you've got to have is a growth mindset. So knowing that you don't know enough is really what it is, and that there's more information out there that's possible that again will put you in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest, digest, and heal. But it also is going to help you to learn, like you're open to the information. If you are going into school and you're like, I'm hot, you know what? I got a 1500 or whatever, and I know everything already. They're probably not going to get good grades because they're going to think that they don't really have to show up or apply themselves or whatever. If you came in with a 1500 and you're like, I'm excited to learn, then they probably would do well, right? Because they have a growth mindset. They realize they don't know enough, so that they have to keep learning. So it just depends on the lens in which you see the world. It makes all the difference and really comes down to it's either you're in a growth mindset or you're not. You're either your cells are replicating and growing and feel safe, or they're shrinking and decaying and replacing themselves eventually. That's the body has two modes mostly. It's either you can't be in love and hate at the same time. So it's just which one do you want to be in?
Right. Yeah, I heard a great quote a while back that hating someone is like drinking the poison and waiting for another person to die.
Right. If similar that Don Miguel Ruiz wrote The Master of Love, he talks about that, spitting the poison. So if you hold on to the poison, or Buddha said, being angry and holding a rock that's hot in your hand and not throwing it. That's what anger is, holding a hot rock in your hand and not throwing it. And it's like you're the one that gets hurt. Just forgive the person. That's the thing that I will say that has really helped. Is just knowing that I never got a manual in this life. I don't know, did you?
No.
Right. So we're all doing the best we can with what we have at the time that we have it. So we make decisions based on our trauma. We make decisions based on our programming. We are probably not even feeling that great in our body, especially these days. You know, there's just so much crap. If you're not aware of it, you're going to be having cloudy thinking or brain fog. And so the thing is you just kind of give other people grace and you just say, listen, I'm not going to take this personally. Like what the way that they're acting has everything to do with their experiences. And that really is just, they're trying to spit the poison on me, but I'll neutralize that by just
A-
saying it's not about me.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people struggle with, and you touched on it earlier, but once you start transforming, people who may have been taking advantage of you, whether it was conscious or unconscious, they start to get irritated because they see you as selfish because you're not serving them anymore. Uh,
Right.
do you have any practical advice for listeners on overcoming things of that nature?
Well, two things. One, I wanted to just say back to your other question. One of the switches to make, with regard to life is hard. Ask yourself, how is this happening for you rather than happening to you? Again, that puts you into the parasympathetic nervous system, makes you feel, start to search for the answers, use your intuition, blah, blah, blah. So that's the answer to that question. Ask yourself, how is this happening for me rather than happening to me? Get creative, find the answers. Your brain's a gold shaving machine. It will find it. It'll be a long Google search, but maybe it'll be on the 10th one or the next page, but it'll be
Right.
there. So to answer your other question, so you were saying, yes, as you continue to evolve and transform, you will quote unquote raise your vibration, or essentially you become interested in things that they are not. And it will be time to say goodbye to them. And so throughout my own transformation, I've had to say goodbye to friends, whether it be overtly or just we kind of fall away. It just happens because once you start living your life with integrity and purpose and joy and happiness, there are some people that are still suffering from different mindsets, and they're going to take it personally, or they're going to see your success as a threat or whatever. And this isn't about them. It's about you becoming your greatest version of you, and what they think is none of your business. Because actually, this also blew my mind when I realized this. There are thousands of perspectives of who I am out there. I cannot go running around and being like, wait a second, that's incorrect. No, that one's right. This one's a little off, but I can fix that. Like it would be exhausting. So
Right.
all you got to do is worry about you, come from integrity. I was talking to my son last night as we were going to bed, and we were talking about Tom Brady. He's obsessed with football and how he's getting a divorce. And I said, look at that, like, he had the girl, the supermodel girl. He's got the kids. He's got the 8 Super Bowl wins, or 7 or something like that. My son was telling me, and he's played in his job. He's got the money. He still does not seem happy. You look at that man, and he is suffering, and you wonder, what is it? And I said, Aiden, that's my son's name. All those things are external. There's something inside he's missing. He needs to find out why he's not happy on the inside, because none of those things fix the problem.
Right.
And that will be the case time and time again.
So if someone transforms or is beginning to transform, and they have someone very close to them, a close family member, uh that seems like it would be a little more difficult to navigate, if they start seeing your transformation as a threat.
Right. So I'm one of 6 kids. I, have my parents who are in their 70s. I grew up Catholic. I went to Sunday school and all that. And it hasn't always been easy. However, you have to just keep choosing you. And eventually they see that you're happier and you're healthier and you're living your purpose and you're not a jerk, right? You're not saying awful things. You're starting to have compassion for everyone. Then they start to realize, okay, so I was afraid, or I thought that this or that or the other thing, but they're like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Amy is becoming the person who she's always wanted to be. And who am I to stand in the way of that? There's something that's very interesting about living your truth. Other people can't argue with it. There's like a knowingness of like, I am not going there. I can't. It's too solid. It's too
Right.
true. Like you can't, it just can't be changed once somebody's living in their true authentic life. It's when you still haven't really crossed over to the point where you're really choosing you consistently and frequently, that you are more apt to worry about what they're thinking and think, because biologically speaking, when your tribes, your family or people that you were raised with or in your community, from back in the hundreds of years ago, if they started to reject you, you probably died. So
Right.
there is still that mechanism in us that doesn't like change, that you don't want, because listen, transformation is the death of the old to bring in the new. It's a change of one identity to another. I went from science teacher to healer. That was not easy. I've also gone from straight to gay. Like I'm there's like a lot of identities. I can't even begin to tell you how many identities I've gone through. And each time it was just about me choosing me and what makes me happy. And I had to learn that I could spend the rest of my life making other people happy, but that would not make me happy. And so I choose me. And guess what? Then I start bringing around the other people who are happy, the other people who enjoy what I bring to the table, are thrilled to hang out with me, are thrilled to see my growth and support me in my success. Those are the people that you want to be hanging out with, not the people who are trying to get you to change, to make them
Right.
comfortable. That's the thing about people who are highly sensitive, is that everybody else is comfortable around them but them.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
until you realize that, you're like, oh, that's why I'm so miserable. That's why my body is failing. That's why my body is, struggling so much.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I feel like we could go on and on. There's so many topics and side streets to go off of. The main topic here. You've been a wealth of knowledge and information. Thank you
Okay, I
so
didn't even
much.
get to teach everybody EFT, but if you all want to learn EFT, just hop onto my site. I've got plenty of videos, podcasts, all kinds of stuff. Just, learn EFT, emotional freedom technique. At first it's a little challenging because there's some steps to learn, but once you learn those steps, it's the same as when you were handed an iPhone. You were like, wait, this thing is like a monster. It can do all these things. I don't know where anything is. Just take the time to learn it because it's so convenient, and it's a little tool you can take with you anywhere at any time.
Actually, the heck with it. Let's take 5 minutes and learn to do it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Cool. So EFT, again, emotional freedom technique. It is first of all, it's been studied for over 25 years. So there's lots of research. You can go to EFTuniverse.com and see all the research papers, the meta studies that have been done on them. Um, the life-changing moment for me was when I saw a man that with PTSD, he had lost everything. His wife had left him. He just was an alcoholic. Everything was awful. He did a weekend of EFT and was able to get his life back. So that's when I started to be like, okay, what's going on here? What it does, it actually changes the neural networks in the brain, and then thus the whole energy of the body to see the world differently. So that's the shift that you're doing when you do EFT. So my scientific brain was really thrilled that they had a scale, so 0 to 10. So 10 is, this is really bothering me. 0 is not at all. And you want to kind of figure out, okay, let's say I first started with fear of snakes. I was afraid of snakes. So I was like, okay, that's a 10, maybe even a 50. But like you're just like, this is really bad. So you say how much it bothers you, and then you say this statement: even though I'm afraid of snakes, I deeply love and accept myself. And that statement can change depending on what you're working on. But you do want to try to say, I love and accept myself. If you cannot say that, because some people have so much self-talk that's been so negative for so long, you could say, I'm willing to believe that I could be a good person. If you're a child, the child can say, I'm a good kid. So you change it however you want, but I deeply love and accept myself as my favorite. And it's great to hear kids in unison saying it. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like hearing angels singing. I love it. So we say, even though I'm afraid of snakes, so you're giving yourself forgiveness and grace. And then I deeply love and accept myself. So even though I'm here and I'm struggling, it's okay. That's really what you're sending the message to the body. Very, very healing. You have to accept where you're at in order to move forward. I always use the analogy of Google Maps. Like if you're going to Google Maps and you say, I want to get to this destination, you have to put it in, but they say, where are you starting at? You cannot go on in life without knowing where you're going and where you're starting from. You have to take inventory. So that in that time, where you say, I love and accept myself, you're just saying, okay, I'm here. It's okay. What else is possible? So then you keep tapping. So there's a point that's here on the hand, the meat of the hand. And each one of these points is related to a meridian. So the meridian system is over 5,000 years old, and meaning that they discovered it 5,000 years ago. Modern science has discovered it as well, and they call it the premovascular system. Woohoo. So we have everybody on board now that this exists. So we tap here and that will help release energy. Then there's another one that's on top of the head. And this is where, so grief is released here, any kind of heart stuff. And up here is a lot of anxiety and emotions. And then here we tap. So while we're tapping and talking, we're going to say the statements and we're going to check in with our body. The triple fast forward way is to keep checking in. Oh, what's coming up? Oh, all of a sudden I just am like thinking of my mom and the time that we were going to the grocery store and she was screaming at me. Like, talk and tap. Keep tuning into what might be coming up, because it's all part of the story and the neural network and how it's integrated into your body. So then there's the inner eyebrow, then there's the outer eyebrow, then there's under the eye. So this is fear and anger on these points. Under here is around control energy. And then under the nose, this one's great for anybody who's really going through some sort of trauma and they need to get back into their body because they've checked out. They're like not there really. If you tap here, this connects the mind and the body and gets everybody present, meaning like mind, body, spirit. And then here's where all the things that we wanted to say, but we didn't, or all the things we said that we shouldn't have, that trauma is stored here. And then here is K27. So sorry, you can't see. So there's 2 points right here and here. I just make a C and then you tap. It might be sore. So we tap there. That is also fear energy. Traditional tapping does not include this one that's in the center of the chest. So I like to include that one because we do talk horribly to ourselves. And this is sort of just telling us, okay, everything's gonna be okay. Come back in, release it. The next one is, sorry, the parasympathetic nervous system's coming on because I'm tapping. So you'll get digestive noises, like you might get hiccups or swallowing or something, or a little burp. It's just part of the rest and digest. And then there's
Can you show us,
Sure.
stand up and show us real quick?
Yeah.
Where you're,
So it's right where
okay,
your
right here.
bra line is. If you're a female or if you wear bras, or a hands width down from your armpit, is 2 points, and those are anger and worry. So the reason why I give you that information is just to help guide you where you might be experiencing these emotions. So like if you're worried about a promotion, you would tap here. If you are feeling like life is out of control, you tap here. If you're feeling a lot of sadness, you're going to tap here or here. So the points are really helpful because they help to release that particular type of emotional energy. But if you are not that in tune, that is fine. You can start with just the standard EFT. Where am I on the scale? Keep tapping, keep talking and saying, I deeply love and accept myself, even though I'm at a 6, even though I'm on 5. The number will keep going down and you will be shocked about how your fears will disappear, how your limiting beliefs will disappear, there was somebody who treated me absolutely horrible in life. And there was one day I was driving down the road and I'm like, oh, I wonder how that person's doing. Oh my gosh. And then I was like, wait, what? I'm like, I guess I released enough energy about that.
Yeah.
You don't want to think of somebody and then your whole nervous system gets hijacked and you're like shaking, drinking your coffee, right? You want to be able to just live your life. So EFT, if we can teach, this is why I love to teach kids, because if we can teach them at a young age to master their thoughts and their energy and what they're thinking, we will have happier, healthier children in the future, adults. So because there's a relationship between childhood trauma that goes unchecked and chronic illness, addiction, and mental illness later in life.
I typically give people an adverse childhood event questionnaire.
Yeah.
score that, because like you said, it affects, the neurological system, the endocrine system, and the immune system. And it has impact for every aspect of your physiology.
Yeah. I remember when I read that people who experience a lot of trauma as a child will have 30% higher cortisol levels for the rest of their lives. Now, I think that's because they weren't addressing the trauma. I'm living proof. I was chronically ill for 30 years and I've done this work for 16 years. I am now 42 years old and my immune system is that of a 28-year-old, based on DNA research. So like they sequenced my DNA and told me what my immune system was. So that was a year ago, and I bet you it's even less because I went grain free and I even dove even deeper into this stuff. So I think that it's kind of like reverse aging, right?
Yeah.
So this is worthwhile work, for sure. It's a biohack, really. It's an energy biohack. It's a life hack.
And it's free.
It's free and you could take it anywhere, and that's what I love. I mean, I had this one instance where I had to pick up my son from the bus and he didn't get off the bus, and then I was supposed to go grab my dog and go to the vet. And I was like, my mind was hijacked because my son was missing. He was 6 years old. And then I had to take the dog, who doesn't talk, to the vet to tell the vet what was wrong. And I was like, I need to get back into this body. I need to get into my thinking mind. And so I'm driving and I'm tapping. And my son thought it was funny because he went to cooking class instead of getting on the bus. But he was like, Mom, I'm here. Everything's okay. I'm like, logically, yes, I understand that, but my body has still not gotten on board with that. So I could feel that I was still hijacked. So I had to integrate the two and get back into my body and hook up the mind and the body so they were on the same page.
Awesome. Well, that's a very practical tool. Thank you so much for that. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
StarkTransformation.com. Also on social media, I'm at Stark Transformation, and Amy Stark, the Stark Transformation Show, is my podcast. So check it out. I've got lots of tips, amazing guests, lots of people talking about how to become the greatest version of who you are, really.
Yeah, we'll include all your links and social media handles in the show notes and the transcripts. And hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
Tim, this was awesome. I absolutely love this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.